So this is home of the Bayless Brothers, a production company that I have with my brother Alec. We make videos mostly for like food and spirit brands, and we're very, very into whiskey, if you don't know that by now. And that's why we have the Bourbon Library. And the Bourbon Library is a very special group that started from a weekly phone call with our dad, and now turned into this like weird drunken booze family of about 5 of us. And I don't know, I said about, like there's a half person in there. Maybe I'm just doing the math wrong. There's my dad, there's Timmy, there is my brother Devin, my brother Alec, me, that's 5, and then there's Kyle, which is, well, my Uncle Timmy is my dad's best friend, and Kyle is Devin's best friend, and I guess Alec and Devin are my best friends. I mean, they're my brothers. I don't know. I love these guys. So, today, we are going to talk about bourbon groups. I think a lot of you are probably in one. For me, it's like a mix of like friends and family, or family's friends, or I don't know. It's all one big kind of amazing thing. But I never thought I'd be part of a group like that, to be honest with you. And so I kind of want to talk about the origin of the Bourbon Library bourbon group, and actually a good place to start will be the original Kentucky trip that we went on, and then I want to talk about this most recent bourbon trail trip we went on, because they were different in a way, and both really special, but we just need to talk about it. So. Okay, so let's make sure that we are okay. Too much light. Not that this story has biblical proportions, but I will start by saying, in the beginning, COVID happened. We all remember COVID, right? Don't say something about it in the comments, because it's just stupid. We need to talk about something else now, okay? What happened was that I was living in an apartment. I just moved out of New York City. I was living in part of a house in Hudson, New York. And I had just started this new business, a food production company, making like food and beverage commercials, some for TV and some for the internet.
Yeah, you gotta turn around. Yeah, it's the camera's this way. Oh, sorry.
And we were getting really into it, and then boom, all the work sort of dried up for a second, and we couldn't leave our apartments, and he was in Brooklyn and I was up in the Hudson Valley. I don't know, earlier in that year we had gone pre-pandemic, had gone down to Kentucky for this bourbon trip, because my dad was getting into whiskey, we were into whiskey. Anyway, we went on this great weekend in Kentucky on the Bourbon Trail. We went and drank 1792 at Barton Distillery. We went to Buffalo Trace. We went to Woodford Reserve. They were all like really great experiences. But going to Three Boys was a special treat, because it was like a real kind of ragtag farm distillery comparatively to these other places. And
Crab Orchard Road.
And also, what I feel like sometimes gets lost in all this is that my dad is the father of 3 boys. And I think there is a special thing about that bourbon. I mean, we love it. It's chocolatey. It's good. We had their 6-year bourbon out of the barrel. It was the first time having bourbon out of a barrel. But it's 3 boys. And my dad has 3 boys. I have 2 brothers. And so I think there is like it feels meaningful to me.
Ooh.
I get a little heavy.
Hold on, let me do
this.
this.
Is my heavy-handed part. Right? Whoever stands right here gets the heavy hand.
Anyway, we went on that great trip. Pandemic happens. This is now the winter. My dad sends these 2 bottles. Hey, let's have a bourbon together. People were kind of doing that at the time, having a cocktail on Fridays over Zoom or whatever. Like, let's give it a try. So my dad, he sent me. He had these 2 bottles sent. from Three Boys. This was at a time when mailing booze was a little like, the rules were a little loosey-goosey. And we did a call. And we started talking, and we were talking about booze. It was Alec, my dad, and I. And we recorded it. And we were like, let's put this out on the Bayless Brothers Can Drink, our podcast, which soon after became the Bourbon Library, because my dad's home bar, he calls the Bourbon Library. And so then, like, well, let's have Uncle Timmy on. And so then Uncle Timmy joins. And my Uncle Timmy, now I'm divorced, but my Uncle Timmy married me. I wasn't married to my Uncle Timmy. That would be complicated. And we are from Indiana, so some of that makes sense. But sorry if you're from Indiana. It's an insider joke, okay? No, he was the officiant of my wedding. And I grew up with him coming over and visiting my parents and very fond of my Uncle Timmy. But I hadn't really I haven't talked to him that much since the wedding, and which was a few years before that. And I was feeling a little like embarrassed because I was just kind of coming out of a divorce. And I don't know. Anyway, my Uncle Timmy got on the call and we were just like, wow, this is such a warm, loving conversation. And what I love about my Uncle Timmy is that he is like the yin to my dad's yang. My dad's a little more serious, a little quiet. Timmy's, and my dad's not the guy to be like, I love you, or he's not super that way. But Timmy is. Timmy kisses you on the cheek when he sees you. He's a big hugger. And also loves whiskey. So Timmy gets on the call. Then we're like, we gotta have Devin on the call. He's our other brother. He's our middle brother. He's between Alec and I. I'm the oldest. So Devin gets on the call, and then he invites his best friend Kyle eventually to get on the call. These are several calls now, and we're recording them as this podcast called The Bourbon Library, which we put out on Spotify, whatever, and all these other places. So now we've got this group of the six of us. Not all of us are always on the call, but most of the time we try to. And for a while it was like weekly, especially during like lockdown periods and stuff where it was like we really needed that social outlet. Then the world kind of opened up and we sort of spread out. And then most recently, this is a long-winded story to get to this point, which is most recently we went to, this is like no more masks, no more COVID life, no more everything. This is the first felt like the most back to normal Kentucky trip. We went and it was all of us, all six of us. And the reason we went was very special. It was my dad's 60th birthday. So he had his three boys and his best friend and one of his boys' best friend, Kyle, who is like sort of a surrogate son or something. There's definitely this really beautiful dynamic there. My dad, in a way, looks up to Kyle, and Kyle looks up to my dad, and a lot of mutual respect, and he's just feels like one of the brothers. I truly love him. And so we were all there, and we had a great trip. And the two main distilleries, we went to a lot of distilleries, but the two main ones were bigger ones that we hadn't been to, which is Maker's Mark and Jim Beam. Now, Maker's Mark, I think, has an incredible, I guess they say campus these days, but it's an amazing, beautiful facility where they make the Maker's 46 is built out into this cave, and you can do the wax experience, and there's a bunch of stuff. Their private barrel select program is phenomenal, and there's such interesting flavors that they're using with the staves, and I really liked going to Maker's. And our tour guide was this hilarious woman who just she was so honest. She was talking about stuff she didn't like that they had, and stuff she loved, and stuff she grew to like, and it was a great experience. And then we went to Jim Beam, and Jim Beam, now I love Old Granddad. I was hoping to buy an Old Granddad shirt or something, because I'm it's at Jim Beam. They don't even mention Old Granddad when you're there, which is sort of a bummer to me. And I it's fine. I know they're trying to sell the sort of higher valued stuff, but if it's an OG, it's an OG. But we went to Jim Beam, and Jim Beam's a little more corporate. You sort of feel like it's a performance. There's a guy with a headphone. You get on a bus. You get out. It's a little Mickey Mouse of whiskey kind of vibe. I can appreciate it, but I don't really love a corporate tour. But this is my bourbon group. This is my family, and these guys have been sending bottle samples to each other. They meet up for stuff. There's all these beautiful connections, and I just never thought that I would have like a men's group in my life. You know, I always thought of it as being this kind of like funny thing, or like, I don't know, something that I wasn't going to be a part of, or like a group of guys. And so a lot of like this sense of grounded friendships in my life were gone. And so to be able to connect with these guys and not just talk about whiskey and what has a chocolate finish or what's got notes of caramel or vanilla or whatever, but to be like, hey, what's going on in your life? Oh yeah, this. Remember Timmy and I one time stayed on the call for another whiskey while everybody got off. We were done recording our podcast to talk about gardening and what we were planting in our gardens. You know, that was beautiful. It was just like, I'm not going to talk to my dad about gardening. I got Timmy to talk to about gardening. Yin, yang, you see what I'm saying here? But the importance of a group, you know, is something that I think I undervalued. And like the idea of like, obviously I cherish family, I cherish my friendships, but the dynamic of a group that has this like, as I think a Jungian therapist would say, or my therapist would say, there's a container, you know, in a way for our relationship and our diving into the deeper stuff. There's a framework under the guise of drinking bourbon together, but really it's about so much more. And I think it's just incredibly valuable to find something, anything. It doesn't have to be bourbon, but I suspect that it might be for you. But if you can find a way to connect with somebody, a group of friends that you can count on as a lifeline or act as a buoy to help. They're not going to carry you, but they're going to help keep you afloat. I think that's everything in this world. And that's why we do what we do. And that's the point of having this channel and doing our podcast and making our documentaries. At the end of the day, we always say to ourselves, how do we personalize this? How do we make it real? And how do we connect it back to our family, to our group, to the Bourbon Library? You know, some bourbons you want to have chocolate, and I'm sure this is great with chocolate, actually. And actually, as I said that, I think that subconsciously I'm also getting chocolate notes on the back end. What's the back end called?
Finish.
Finish. On the finish.
Or the tushy.
Or the is that true?
No, I just depends on what you're talking about, I guess.
Yes, the flavor of the tushy is quite chocolatey.
my whether you're talking about bourbon or whether you're talking about my back end, it depends on whose back end.
I'm going to give you I'm never talking about your back end. Just want to talk about that. I'm curious. Do you have a bourbon group? Who's in your bourbon group? Tag your bourbon group. Whatever it is, let's connect, let's expand, let's build this community together. Because the Bourbon Library doesn't just have to be our group of 6. It can be so much more. We want you to have a seat at our table, to have a seat at our bar, okay? So, yeah. Anyway, if you got this far, God bless you. To drink is to live.